This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry, and I have with me in studio virtually here, Mr. Dennis Williams. Welcome, Dennis, to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, Dennis, just real quick bio introduction, is the creator of the Cash Map Guide, an innovative financial application. The Cash Map Blueprint, 2 tools. The guide, let me start that over. Just a real quick bio for Dennis. Dennis is the creator of Cash Map. It's an innovative finance application, and the Cash Map Blueprint is able to guide people to confidently use more of their money, to keep more, save more, and experience doing the things in life that bring them their greatest joy. Dave and his wife, Linda, live in Bellingham, Washington. He earned his MBA from the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and has 25 years of experience in operations, finance, and human resources. Dennis, I always like to ask my guests here on the show, how did you get into this industry? Why are you doing what you're doing? Tell us a little bit of the story of how you got here.
I think there's really a couple of steps to it. First of all, when I was getting my MBA at the University of Hawaii in Honolulu, I was an internal auditor working for a trust company, a self-directed trust company. And I saw these officers that were coaching people, and I thought, wow, imagine if more of that was available, that I would be able to actually kind of guide and help people to be able to get them where they want to be, rather than just those who just have a fair amount of assets. Years later, when the family, married now with kids, and we made a decision to move to Washington State, I was given an opportunity to run a small mortgage company and meet somebody who was associated with an Australian bank, in which he pointed out a tool that the banks regularly use that consumers know little about. And I certainly didn't have it as part of my MBA program. My CPA didn't know anything about it. My banker didn't know anything about it. And so I thought, between that and how most people do not understand the power of compounding, putting those 2 pieces together was something, here's something that can be transformational and help people to be more focused. And then I had friends who saw what I had done in an Excel worksheet and offered money for me to bring it to the market without me asking.
That's always nice. Those are the best kind of friends to have when you're trying to launch a business and they see a great opportunity. And I'm so glad you did, because it sounds like it's very helpful, especially with consumers and even financial advisors, right? And using this cash map, which we'll get into a little bit later in our show. And as I have kind of cracked into the industry, everybody gets here in a different way. So I appreciate you sharing, a little bit about that background. But as an advisor to advisors and as an advisor to, consumer clients and helping them with their cash flow, what would you say is your own personal, maybe biggest issue of trying to achieve your own balance?
I'm one of these individuals that even if I'm working for someone, I always jump in 150%. Not remembering that balance actually enables me to be more effective at what I do. And so one of the things that I have now actually put in is I actually block out time to be able to go walking about 3 miles a day. And so I've knocked off about 25 pounds. And I don't feel any different, but my body says I'm doing a heck of a lot better. And I've kind of learned, again, back to compounding with what I'm trying to share and teach. It's small changes bring big results.
Yeah. And that personal health, that sounds like that's really the point of your balance, right? If you value that quite highly, that's a big priority for you. What else would you say if you were to define balance? If you were to say, this is my definition of what balance is, what would you say? What resonates with you?
I think what balance truly means is the right mix between knowing to be focused on the small stuff. And of course, that's something else that I've had to learn, as well as relaxing and saying, it's okay, this isn't important. And to be able to kind of bounce between those two, to be able to say, this is good enough. It's really, really important to be able to do that, because ultimately it does have an impact on relationships as well.
You know, it's interesting. In my doctoral program, I had a member of our cohort who introduced me to the good enough principle. And he's like, Travis, you're going to submit that paper. It's going to go to an editor. It's going to come back. You're going to make revisions. You're going to revise it. You're going to resubmit it. It's going to go to somebody else, and they're going to make more revisions, and they're going to send it back. At one point, they're going to approve it or they're not going to approve it. It's the same thing with any assignment you do for a course or a class. He said, you know, his wise advice, he'd been in the program a couple of years ahead of me, and said, listen, it's got to be good enough at some point, right? At some point, you have to let it go. I think that principle, as you well eloquently had stated here, that's a great definition of balance. Some things just have to be good enough. Some things you just have to let go of and say, that's good enough. I did the best I could on this. Next, right? And otherwise, I think we can get really caught up in the perfectionism mindset that so has taken over our society, of trying to be perfect and then backing away from, well, I can't be perfect, right? And I you know, they just really struggle. I see a lot of clients that struggle with this perfectionism. So in that vein, what has helped you to really let go of things? How do you know, like, oh, this is good enough, and now I'm going to let go of it?
I think there's another part that's counterintuitive, back to your point about being good enough. And that is being consciously aware of what the small steps are that you're looking at mastering. There's a great book that's out. I don't know if you have not read it, it'd be worth the time. It's called Atomic Habits. Phenomenal book, where instead of trying to hit a home run every time, you just focus on doing just small incremental things that are achievable, and just by doing it over again. I'm currently taking a phenomenal investment class right now, and before you're allowed to trade money, you have to do the same thing for 20 days. In which you're just zeroing in on some small incremental things, and you master that just one step at a time. So just by doing it, just one small step, it kind of takes care of the balance thing, because you know what you're trying to master. It's one small item. It's in Atomic Habits, it's make a 1% improvement goal. Well, 1% improvement, that just makes it really doable. And then you can give yourself the luxury of being able to celebrate.
Yeah.
And you just keep doing that. It just kind of, again, incremental change.
Yeah. And in Atomic Habits, nothing new. I've read the book. Everybody loves it. It's great. It's a revised idea of just doing the one thing. There's a book called The One Thing. There's a book called Successful Habits. And there's many other books I've seen this exact same principle. Focus on one thing. So when I've actually used that concept, and I think it's a great concept, I've used that concept to help people when they're trying to achieve balance, when they're trying to change something. Great. Don't focus in every area. Focus on one, but focus on the one that's most important, the one that has the highest priority, because then you're likely to achieve a balance that you didn't have before. Then you can go and change other areas, because now that one's aligned. So I love that you brought that up, and thank you for bringing up that concept. It's a fantastic book and built on great concepts. So what do you see? I know you've worked with other advisors. I know you've worked with consumers, obviously with their money. So you're acting in an advisor role as well, or a coach role, right? Financial coach. Mm-hmm. What do you see as some of the biggest issues that other advisors or other, clients face with achieving balance?
I think is what we just talked about, biting too much, biting off too much at one time. I've also seen a fair amount of professional jealousy. I spent a good part of my career in healthcare, and I can remember working with physicians and trying to help them with improving the efficiency of their practice, and just how difficult it would be to have them fully utilize a team of people around them so that they in turn can get more done. It's not about an individual needing to be the smartest. It's really all about being able to leverage a resource so that in turn you're able to do more with the same amount of time.
Exactly. Resource, leveraging, delegation, and being able to scale what you're doing so that you're not doing everything, right? The E-myth, he brought this up, Michael Gerber brought this up, like quit wearing all the hats.
Mm-hmm.
Wear the hat that is the most productive for you, and then, assign and delegate these other things. What do you think? And I ask this question, if people bring this concept up, because it comes up all the time. What do you think is the number one problem when it comes to delegating so that you can scale?
I think the biggest problem actually is really two things. Is number one, not being willing to take a step back and acknowledge what your strength is as well as what you're not great at, so that you're wanting to do it all. So that's one. The other one is an inability to trust other people and to give them the freedom to do for them, meaning, yes, they may make a mistake, but try this out for size. And this comes from me building collaborative teams in a corporate setting. One of the biggest things I used to share with my staff is, tell me when you make a mistake, or tell me what you don't know. And of course, that seems counterintuitive. But my point was that by them being willing to know that they could share where there was a problem, we would then focus on that so that they in turn became stronger. And as they become stronger, I become stronger. And so in that respect, you're building a strength of a team so that just the entire environment is more relaxed and you get better outcomes.
Yeah, it's an interesting fact there. When everybody's focused on improvement, is a more relaxed environment, right? But if it's too uptight, if teams don't trust each other, and they're not working on improvement, they're not being proactive, like as a Covey principle, right? Being proactive and sharpening that saw. Mm-hmm. Those two principles, like those work together. It creates a culture where people are willing to learn, they're willing to improve. It's the egos that get in the way. It's the fear of failing, for your team that might make you not want to try new things. Mm-hmm. But looking at your strengths, I'm definitely a strengths-based individual. I try to focus on what people do really well and utilize and delegate and hand off other things that I don't want to do or I'm not very good at. Mm-hmm. And that has really helped me to delegate and grow a team as large as we have now. So if you were to give one piece of advice, is it looking at your strengths? Is it improving your weaknesses? Is it trusting other people? What would you say? Like, what would be the most important thing you were to say to other advisors of how to delegate better so you can have more balance?
I think that the number one item, if you want to start with getting more balance, is recognizing that taking downtime for yourself is absolutely essential, because if you don't and you are tired, you in turn, or like something as simple as exercise, it's going to have effect on your mental acuity. And therefore, you're not going to see clearly to be able to do some of the other items that you're talking about. So schedule time just as much as you would schedule, a meeting with someone. You schedule time to step away so that you are on your A game, so you have clarity to be able to do the other items we were talking about.
Super important. I mean, I schedule workouts, schedule time to read scriptures. Like if you don't, it's that whole idea. If you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. You're winging it, right? You don't build it in. Yet we're so good at, I'm going to schedule time to be with someone for a business opportunity or networking or an appointment. It's because we value that. But yet we value these other things that are super important to us, our health, our relationships. What are we scheduling? What are we actually doing? Well, that's very well taken and great advice here. I'd love to dig into, Dennis, what you do for advisors, how you actually help them to have balance. And you're the creator of the cash map, which we've talked a little bit offline about how this works, but maybe explain to us what is the cash map, and we'll go to that point.
Sure. There are very few people actually know how much they spend in any given month. And the best way to get there, the best way to not get there, is to talk to them about creating a budget. There are some who will, but most I have found they get glassy-eyed. And they get started with a Mint, or you choose the budgeting application. But the problem with all these applications are it doesn't show the future impact over time over what it will do for them. When you first start working with an advisor, they provide an awesome analysis and overview based on a snapshot picture. But the consumer has no way of getting any updates as relates to taking that picture and attempting to simplify it so that they understand as their picture changes or they are thinking about doing something else, they can see the impact of the power of compounding based upon what they're spending that particular month. CashMap does that in a very simple term. So the other thing is, think of a budget. It's usually not on a monthly, it's on a 6 month or a year. Well, again, back to the point of starting small, have them just start with 1 month, capture just 1 month. CashMap does that. You can take the 1 month and call it just 1 month, or if you decide you want to average it for 1 month, and that's the year. But the point being is you're taking 1 month and now you blow it forward. Now, when somebody sees what's possible, here's what happens. They end up saying, oh, I had no idea. What if I was to cut back over here and, I actually have some income opportunities I can take care of. What would it look like if I did blah, 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 blah? They can save what they have. They now can create another one with another scenario of knowing what they can do. They immediately can see what the effect is. And now all of a sudden, what just happened? They are now budgeting, but we never told them that. And so starting with just 1 month and moving forward, that's actually okay, because guess what's going to happen next month? They're consciously aware that they're making a change. So the next month's budget, they can simply plug in a couple numbers, and now they see the effect. Guess what? We've now created a sustainable path. Guess what? Now, when they see that, they're walking into the advisor's office, putting more money on the table, and the investment advisor never even had to ask. We've just totally turned the table in which now the advisor is going to have more assets under management, and they're not spending time talking about how to get this person to budget. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is because we take a second look at this problem where cash sitting in your checking account doing nothing only benefits the bank. So we take the strategy the banks use and now say, let's have a consumer use that. And we use a very small line of credit to create leverage. And we change the timing that people pay bills to the end of the billing period, so that in effect, we are now using our idle money in the checking account. So people don't see their checking account as a piggy bank during the month, but now they're being much more focused on what they do and how they apply it. And that also compounds the future look. So those are the couple of things that CashMap does that creates outcomes that you otherwise don't see, and enables customers to be much more focused on recognizing every dollar I get really does count. And now they are more inclined to stay on focus.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've done financial coaching with couples for a long time, and I've done coaching as an advisor, and then did coaching full time, and still do a healthy amount of coaching now of advisors with their money. And it's a different feel, but the same needs arise. A lot of it come with the relationship. What do you find is the outcomes of when couples do this together, when they're on the cash map, same page? Do you find that this is improving their relationship by, having the 6-month budget instead of trying to recreate something every month and staying on track, right? Having a longer type of runway here. Do you find that there's some benefit there for the relationship?
Well, it's actually it's actually been a huge benefit, and I've actually started talking to family and marriage therapists, because one of the biggest issues that people have around divorce is money. And so I've had families who have come back and have said, going through this process has improved our marriage. We sit down once a month and we can see the improvement that we're making, and it motivates us to stick to it for subsequent months. And because we also go through a process of asking the question, what are the things over the next 5, 10, 15 years that will bring you the greatest joy, that if you aren't able to achieve it, you're going to kick yourself in the backside? Each partner does that. They do it. It's worked out. They do it during date night. And then they walk away with an integrated plan with clarity over what both of them want. So now when they sit down from month to month, their interests are aligned. That's what they tell me.
Yeah, that's super important. The research I've done in this area, especially even on the dissertations, when couples have similar financial values and goals, they're able to achieve those financial goals much quicker, right? It's not rocket science. It's family science. And sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than rocket science, but it's pretty logical to understand that. And it makes a lot of sense. What I'm intrigued with is the fact that, if it's helping people who normally have a budgeting problem. I don't actually like to use the word budget. Think of it more of as like a diet, right? Like, oh, I got to keep changing every day or every month. But more, you have them more or less on a plan, right? And that plan has a little bit more teeth in it. It's a longer period of time. It's not just thinking at it month to month. Therefore, it helps them to keep it monthly. I think that's a really interesting concept. It's not like 10 years down the road where they can't see it, right? It's just a few months ahead. In addition to that, as you're mentioning, using this leverage piece, how does that typically help a client? And would you recommend that for someone that is struggling with a lot of debt? Maybe they're high income earners, but they have a lot of debt and they kind of bury themselves there. Would you suggest that they use this type of tool if they have the habits or the past of being, not so well in managing that debt?
Well, I think it's important to break this into, again, small pieces. The first step is, again, someone just taking a snapshot picture of how did I spend last month? And so that they just see that for the first time. And again, why 1 month? Because that's doable. That's not hard for them to do. Too often we tell somebody want to come with a budget for 6 months or something. Too big of a elephant to bite off. I had a conversation with someone from New York last month, and in which we just started talking about this concept. And he shared with me, as a case in point, that there's some folks that are on Wall Street. This guy was a certified high wealth advisor. Some of his clients are billionaires. And his comment was, they don't know how they spend their money either. However, as soon as I told him how you can effectively save thousands of dollars, he was talking about people from Goldman Sachs who have a relatively small base, and the bulk of their income is based on bonus. And they will use a line of credit, and they just take the money, use it, and then they just pay the interest that gets billed when it comes. And then the light bulb went on. He saw the benefit of moving their income into the line of credit to minimize the outstanding balance. And by restructuring it, he said, Dennis, we could literally save them thousands of dollars by making a small move in money management. So whether you have a lot of debt or not, frequently people interpret this to mean that we're talking about the person who's struggling with a poor credit score. The numbers don't matter. It's all about taking a strategy that banks have been using for years and just adding it to the mix and juicing your returns and keeping money. As I tell people this, I guide people on and teaching them how they can use more of their money to keep more of their money so they can save more of their money and get the outcomes that they're most excited about getting.
Yeah, I love that. That's all what it's about. That was your intro. That was your bio. That's really this tagline with CashMap, is to really help people keep more of their money. And what I love what you said about that is, like, the banks have been using this tool. It's exact method. Mm-hmm. Now, I know others who have touted, the whole be your own banker with, put all your income in life insurance. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking a line of credit. You can flow your money in as income, keep a really small interest rate, and utilize that money to pay down other interest rates, to pay down other debts, and to even invest more, because you're really becoming a better steward of what you have. It is counterintuitive, very counterintuitive. And I bet some people might even have some pushback on it because, like, I don't want to open up a line of credit. But it's interesting, the higher net worth individuals that I've dealt with, and those that working in banking, the reason why they work with high net worth individuals is they're doing big lines of credit and they're doing great big wealth, accounts as well. And it's an interesting, side note, but obviously with the Glass-Steagall Act, like, that allowed banks to be able to do that, to be able to, have lines of credit, but then also administer, wealth accumulation accounts, whether that's investments or other things. So I think it's kind of a phenomenon that you've taught people how to do this without going to the bank and doing it necessarily, but they're doing it, through a line of credit and then managing it on their own. How long? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, there's another key piece to this that I also find people don't do. And they don't ask the question, what happens if my situation changes? What happens if I have a hiccup in my income? Well, when we use a line of credit, I'm only using 1.5 times. Actually, the maximum is 1.5 times the cash flow coming through their checking account. It's very small. And that's over the life of the solution. Usually it's closer to maybe 1.25. So if somebody's depositing 10 grand a month, that's a line of credit. It's only $15,000. The bank just they just roll their eyes and say, whatever. And the beauty of this, over the way the system works, is it's minimizing risk. It's enabling them to keep more of their money. And by doing this repeatedly, their credit score goes up. So you're actually strengthening the financial stability of the way the bank looks at the customer. It's a win all the way around. And if somebody wants, and we're not touching savings, and if you're talking about infinity banking, what I teach puts that on steroids, because I'm not taking a large chunk and tossing it at something. I'm using small tranches, which makes it a more effective, lower interest rate, so that it's a bigger win.
Yeah, it's a win-win-win, and it's not all invested in whole life insurance. So that's the good part. But people can decide, if that's part of their plan, great. Yeah. And having an advisor that is close in hand, you're not replacing the advisor, but having an advisor that you can be working with, which gets back to the original thought and the question. Because some advisors, they don't deal with debt consolidation. They don't deal with budgeting. They don't deal with this aspect of financial planning, which we all know is part of financial planning. However, if you're not holistic and you don't focus on this aspect, you might not be dealing with this. How can advisors who maybe aren't working in that space, or maybe they do want to outsource, they do want to delegate this, and they're maybe tired of doing it, and they'd rather have someone else with, and utilize CashMap and be, involved with you. How can they begin that connection with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you, Dennis?
Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. One is the app is available. And this is another part that's really big. In the app itself, I've tried to create something, and I'm told repeatedly it's text heavy. People don't like to read. But the idea is enable people to be independent. It's okay if they just want to use the app. And so, I have people who will just email someone the app. And but as far as getting a hold of me, we do an 8-week coaching program, 1.5 to 2 hours once a week. And by the time they're done, they will understand the concept and how to do it. An individual can simply email me at dennis@cashmapconsulting.com. They can book a time with me at bookatimewithdennis.com. If somebody wanted just to drop by and give me a call, or my number is 360-510-6919. It's any one of those options.
Well, it was great to have you on the show. I know this is incredibly helpful for those consumers who are really focused in this area and need help. Going to help their finances, their relationship. Their own psychological health is on the line when all those things are paired together. But also advisors who need to delegate, right? Who need to get past and trust. Follow Dennis, check him out, do your own research on this, And, obviously I'm not here to endorse or not endorse, but obviously you can go to cashmapapp.com. We'll have the links down below. You can book a time with Dennis.com and find some time with him to, discuss this at length and further, and get reacquainted on these principles, and really get to know each other and develop that trust, right? And delegate this out to Dennis, and work with each other, kind of integrated with your practice. So this has been an excellent interview, Dennis. Very insightful, intriguing as we first got to know each other. I'm always looking for resources for my own clients, resources for advisors to achieve greater balance. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, sharing your story, and your resources with us here. Loyal listeners, please give him a check. Go to cashmapapp.com. Thank you for spending the time with us today, Dennis.
No, it's my pleasure. The other thing I was going to say, I also have a YouTube channel called Cashmap Consulting. So check it out and subscribe.
Excellent. We'll put all those in the show notes. Thanks for being with us, everyone. Stay tuned for another episode of the Balanced Advisor podcast.